It's a website version. So embarrassing. It takes a gust of wind to cause another 5% which they've got to go to a better shop as well. Right. People wandering through the It does make any money, it's lots of other ways. That's the whole idea, and so the people are saying to including like Brendan, who used to run the Angel. It cost my time down there. I got the meeting to take for for months at a time. It doesn't matter. It's just getting forward. When you
yes, for the first time, I was on my way back for the first time.
Very well, man.
It's a fabulous place. Really fabulous place. 12 days. Did a solo holiday. There was a guy who took 14 of us through national parks in Costa Rica. It's just lovely. Oh, go. Yeah.
But in truth, it was Patrick around whom a breathtaking and visual as
Sure.
yeah,
Mineral water?
Yeah.
to satisfy, for example,
After a very rocky start, like the arbitrary cut-off point.
Yeah, you don't.
Good, can you know, it's quiet enough as it is.
Just that, but there'd also been commentary, using the names of the great Hungarian team of the era when they united, imagery, passing moves, a shot and a goal, or a great save. Having no TV in these days, this was the closest we got to real football, and eventually Paddy instilled all the names of these great players into me. Then after that, Paddy had me working with him to make an imaginary sports newspaper. Paddy would edit, by doing a critique of my amateur's efforts and put together a 4-page version of the Sporting Post. A year or two later, my family moved to a house in Ferry, which was close to his grand's house, and wonderfully she had a donkey field, in which was a mini football pitch for us. The donkey didn't mind and kept the grass short. Many happy summer hours spent there, and Paddy always knowledgeable and vocal with matching commentary. They only have learned recently of the Hungarian connection. It was about this time that independent people started going to see the matches. Back in the early 60s, as teenagers, we used to send old pals for matches at dens on the terrace in the Slow. Roddy rode in all day. Paddy, however, had no thing. He would go to the top of the high terrace and stand there to take notes. In the evening, he wrote up his match report. Then on Sunday, he would prepare his report with other Sundays. Having a Sunday paper round helped, and they always turned up early to return the match reports. Our paths diverged, we met up on occasion at school reunions, or in the first pub for a Dundee match, our close schoolmates and significant others for me, the ship in Waterfield, which he always started with, the first one won't touch the sides. Many, many French memories will always have a good place in my heart. A few words just from me. And to start with, a few words from my mum Jenny and the Johnson family in Scotland. With love, goodbye, Paddy. As Charles said, blended families, you win some, you lose some, and I certainly won. Paddy's mum Trish married my grandfather Jimmy in the 70s, before I was born. Whilst a short marriage, I have my mum to thank for staying close to Patrick and giving me the chance of building a very special relationship with him in the years forward. Obviously, football was a big part of our lives. He would come up to Dundee, go to games, and he will not thank me for saying unfortunately I'm a Celtic fan, but he would come to Celtic Park with me for a Dundee game. Until one game where I sat in Dundee with him, Celtic won 8-0. He didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. He took me to the pub afterwards to a Rangers pub. He said he was never going to cross the door of Celtic Park again, which sadly he did. His star shone brighter than most I know. You knew when he walked into a room, partly his infectious laugh and smile, and partly noticing the Dunhill cologne which he wore, which would trail around behind him. There'll always be some phone calls, always starting with, "Hey kid, it's Uncle Pete." We'd speak about whatever we spoke about, always ended, "Love you, behave." I'm going to leave you with one of my favourite stories. Paddy would go to a fish and chip shop near to and he went in one day, ordered his fish and chips, ordered being a Scotsman, ordered Paddy. He said, "We only have cod." His response, being Paddy, was, "Why is it you English are insistent on giving us all cod?" She said, "I can get haddock in for next time." So, next time he went in, a bit of a wink from the chip shop vendor, said, got your haddock here?" He said, "Are you Patrick?" He went, "Yes." So if you had a few on it, so he gets 2 slices of fish with fish and chips. Kieran started a long relationship with the fish shop man every time he went in, extra cheeky 3 pieces of fish. And then some months later, he goes in, gets a nod and a wink to the wall from the chip shop guy. He said, started doing photos of famous people in the wall. Goes up to the wall as he's putting his freshly battered fish into the oil. Goes up to the wall. You'll never guess who it was. Bloody Patrick fucking Stewart.
Tanya's fish and chicken.
As a Scotsman, not offended,
Scottish guys come.
just delighted to Patrick fucking Stewart's All that's left to say is thank you, I love you, miss your cookie, and we love you.
Glad you heard that straight. Yeah.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah.
That was feeling.
But this message will explore
I wish that I could be there with all of you. I'm celebrating Patrick today. He was such a loving uncle to Ben, Alex, Louisa, and I, and a great uncle to our kids, Claudia, Lily, Alice, and Harry, all of whom adore him as much as we do. When we were kids and Patrick visited us in Bermuda, he brought an excitement to our lives. He was so fun and fresh, making our dad and mom so happy to have him. He always carved out a bit of time for each of us. On one of his visits, I remember as a preteen, him taking me to the beach, wanting to die because he was wearing a Speedo. Ben remembers that Patrick taught him how to properly hold a cricket bat. And both of us remember Patrick always cooking burgers. I once told him that I had this core memory of him. He cringed, holding his chin, waiting for the hammer to drop. And innocently I said, it was whenever he came to visit he would cook us hamburgers. The color slowly returning to his face. He was our only link to our father's family for many years. Patrick took his responsibility as a big brother seriously and helped all of Patricia and Guy's children together. Which is the part of him that I most admired. Showing affection and love came naturally to him. I really loved being in his and my father's company, sharing their somewhat twisted sense of humor made me feel seen, heard, and when I was really on a good one, gasped at. Making both of them laugh was the best. He was truly a great uncle, especially in these last few years. Patrick, knowing my now almost grown children and delighting in them, makes me remember how important and special we all were to him. I know football was his thing, something that I could look past. But his heart was always with us, and we are all so lucky to have had him.
Rather than a just
Ian Hawking explains how his supposed rival, Patrick, went into his very
I'm just waiting for the ball to come back on again, because that would be such a padding It's a lovely job being a football writer. It's quite weird too. You don't sit in open plan offices picking up wisdom from our elders and betters. You meet them in freezing crystals, squabbling over a phone line, or panicking. Sometimes a bit of cold shoulder to it never Paddy. I can see dozens more than I see it. We knew him first as a brilliant read, and then as a warm, uplifting welcome into the profession. And he was an inspiration, because he set such high standards on the page, but also because Paddy looked out for people. Whether you're a bumptious newcomer or shy, Paddy made you feel you belonged. He made our branch of journalism so much better in so many lasting ways. He enthused us. He cut through hostility. One of his close friends and colleagues, Andy Wright, reminded me that in the 1990s, football reporting could feel like a scene of misogyny. Paddy was a rare island. He certainly knew his status, but Paddy laughed at himself a lot. I was reminded by Rob Shepherd, who worked as Paddy's deputy for a while, how he was routinely referred to as the erudite Patrick Barclay. It was a tease, but it was also true. That depth of knowledge, the elegant turn of phrase, the lines that made you laugh out loud, his fantastic bullshit detector. The gravitas, without being stuffy, he cut across readerships, generations. People who preferred fanzines migrated to Paddy and the Sunday Telegraph. Every broadsheet newspaper wanted to turn with Paddy as their voice of football. And occasionally, But the best gig in journalism was to be on a rival paper's Paddy, because if we were crafty, we would find our way on the same beats, same games, same trips, and best of all, the same long stays at whatever corner of the big tournament Paddy had made his own. I was in that slipstream for 20 odd very happy years, and it was the best guidance possible, and just such fun. He'd greet you in a hotel lobby in that mischievous grin. He'd take you aside and ask you to explain if you're the best restaurant in town, and the size. Rather ordinary wineries. We suggest a working strategy for the next few days. And Paddy might casually drop in something like, "Oh, Rome next week. I'm meeting Svenja Harris. Do come along." He had an amazing contacts book, and he was exceptionally generous and cheap. And of course he had found the best restaurant, the best football people to hang out with. It might be in Seoul, it might be in Madrid, it might be in the Maghreb at an African Cup of Nations. Paddy was going to these sorts of tournaments long before it became fashionable. He was really intrepid like that. If he had to go on the sleuth, the murder of a Colombian footballer after the World Cup, he'd have a go. If he saw pointers to the future of football in Senegal, he'd be there in the name of story. All that genuinely changed the way football gets covered. For those of us who were for those of us who are called Paddy,
Yeah, of course. Shouldn't have.
Generation after Patrick, but yet my mind made of very same stuff.
This is extremely intimidating for me. I can hear Paddy's voice say, "I'm a Dundee fan. I'm not used to big crowds." As is often the case with good friends, I was first introduced to Patrick Barclay at school. Not that we were at school together, you understand. Hard to believe, I know. He was comfortably 25 years my senior. It means he was in his late 30s when he wrote the piece that hit me straight between the eyes as I flicked through the newspapers after breakfast at an educational establishment outside Edinburgh was, possibly still is, one of schools. So it's slightly surprising, on reflection, that they even took the Independent, the new kid on the block, the newspaper landscape at the time. The Indie, as it became known, was not averse to taking interesting editorial decisions, such as running a feature on football in Dundee. Although the story in question was hard to ignore, even at hand. Tuesday, 3rd of March, 1987, the first leg of a UEFA Cup quarter-final encounter between Dundee United and Barcelona. While obviously newsworthy, it was made doubly so by the presence of Gary Lineker and Mark Hughes in the side managed by Dick Reynolds. Dundee United in Barcelona. Mouth-watering, I suppose. So naturally, Paddy chose to write about Dundee FC. Dundee Street of shared fame, he recalled Dundee's thrilling run to the European Cup semi-finals in 1963. As a mad Dundee fan, marooned in Edinburgh, I was enraptured. I cut it out and stuck it on page 1 of my first Dundee FC scrapbook. Paddy rhapsodised by Dundee's greatest ever win, 8-1 then German champions. I'll just read out a short paragraph, if I may. Dundee Street of shared fame. Trepidation kept the crowd down to about 25,000. The faint heart missed the truth. After 30 minutes, Dundee were 3 up. By half-time, it was 5. And while we kept pinching ourselves, Alan Gilsey, who had almost a full head of hair in those days, open brackets, we all did, close brackets, completed a hat-trick in an 8-1 triumph. That we all did was Paddy to a T. Self-deprecating, chatty, charming. It didn't know it then, but I know it now. I think I might one day get to know this titan of sports writing, Dundee fan to boot. It didn't seem possible. A dozen years later, it seems fitting that this was our trip to the San Siro, where Dundee's European Cup dream had vanquished against AC Milan. I was sent out by the Scotsman to report on Manchester United's own bid to win the trophy. A quarter-final, the Inter waving their way in 1999. And though I remember being a little odd sharing the same day as David Beckham, and things got even more surreal. When I arrived back in Manchester afterwards, I found myself shooting a taxi flying this Deaton and the actor Richard Wilson, who was meeting Paddy, and made it utterly unforgettable. In an intimidating setting of journalists, far more authoritative than I could ever dream of being, I introduced myself to Paddy. He immediately slung an arm around me. He instantly made me feel included. I know many here will recognise being enveloped by this quintessential Paddy power to make one feel special. We struck up a friendship. It had Dundee at its core. I'd like to think there was more to it, but it looked back at emails we had sent me, often several during the same game, and they were, more often than not, to do with Dundee, and had very to-the-point subject headings. Same old. Just when things were looking up. The usual. Plus points from Leeds Park. It's 4:40 AM in Thailand and we're 2-0 up. Ah well. ... The view from Najaf. The view from Austin, Texas. The view from Vancouver. Embarrassing. Must win. Jesus. Oh dear. Collapse. Fuck me. Just to clarify, that last one was not sent from on high, since the contrived twice daily, forwards, and changers, and they succumbed to 94. I did sometimes wonder what possessed Paddy to continue caring so much. I mean, he covered 9 World Cups, 10 European Championships. He described Socrates in his story, one of the great World Cup matches of all time. And here he was, organising flights to Inverness, whilst Dundee played Ross County. I'm pretty sure it was me. He wrote a chapter in the book, where he addressed post-retirement bliss of watching Dundee as a fan again. As if by a miracle, this was the love of old that gave and gave and gave and made no demands, he wrote. He was a kid again. He recalled 14 years old, heading through to Colourful, playing a draw or run against St Johnston, to secure Dundee first, all in all, it's like being again. Paddy is, I think, an apologist to Alan Gazini, Dundee's finest ambassador of the last 50 years. I smiled at the photograph of Paddy handing Mo Salah the Football Writers of the Year award that circulated a few weeks ago. I looked again at Paddy's tie. Unmistakably, Dundee FC tie. I will miss you, Paddy. Every Dundee match I attend, including this weekend against St Mirren. And like everyone here, I will miss you, and am missing you, every day in between. Thank you.
They're getting better.
I met Kelly in 1998 when I went to Vegas and did as their diplomatic correspondent, and he was their chief football writer. And the very first story that I did was about adopting Christians in investigating Egypt. And Mubarak regime lied about this story and denied it. And these were the days, some of you, like me, may remember, before mobile phones and internet, when we all had fax machines. So the Egyptian government got hold of the numbers of the faxes for the Sunday Telegraph for every department, including sports, and started sending endless faxes to gum up all machines. So the sports editor of the Sunday Telegraph came marching into the newsroom and said, "Who the fuck is Christina Lamb?" I was mortified. Paddy thought this was very funny. He invited me for a drink. It was the start of a peaceful friendship. In fact, I don't think he would mind me saying I was one of the few women in his life he didn't try to seduce. In fact, Harvey was also a football journalist. They also became dear friends. A few weeks after that first meeting, first drink with Paddy, he appeared at my desk with a rather intriguing invitation. He asked me, "Would you mind being Mrs. Lineker for the night?" So I said that, and it turned out that Erin Lineker then wrote a column for the Sunday Telegraph, which was supposed to be the Sunday Telegraph sports department's guest at some Nixie Awards dinner, and he'd just split up with his wife. So he had asked Paddy to bring a date. Now, I don't think I was really quite what he was expecting Paddy to bring, but that is Paddy's mischievousness. When the Euros were held in Portugal in 2004, Carla and I were then living in Estoril, and Paddy stayed at a hotel around the corner, and we saw a lot of them. And a new restaurant had just opened on the beach called Azimut, which Paddy running and started coming every night with all the other football writers. It was run by a man called Senor Luis. But these were the days of lavish, expensive ones. We laughed as on the proceeds of those, every time I went back to Azimut, there would be new tables, new televisions, and pictures. I also used to take my son Lorenzo, who was there before, and he was collecting CDs of the Portuguese football team, which he got when he was a Petra. So Paddy soon had the entire British press corps into collecting these stickers for him. I really went to the restaurant for Lorenzo, but there was one player who never got. And whenever we go back to that restaurant, Senor Luis always asks about Senor Patrick. And I know that next time we go, we'll tell him he will be devastated. How could you not love Paddy? He was always dapper, he was always charming, he was the life and soul. But as Ian said, he was also erudite and cared deeply about the written word. We didn't always agree with Brexit, for example, though he would come to Brexit, and we had some heated conversations on Israel and Gaza. But he was a kind and generous friend, and he was a caring person who could talk to you about anything. In fact, it was his shoulder I went and cried on when I came back from the Elizabeth's bus in Pakistan. It was blowing. The last 2 years, goals when carrying arms at the crossing, sometimes with Lauren and Sally, and more recently with Stefan. Or at those parties at his house where he always pressed salmon from the farm's fishmonger, always a potato salad. Or in the park during COVID when he started taking all his neighbours' dogs for him and made a whole lot of friends. He was very keen I met his daughter Jen, who was then when she moved to Greece, he loved going to stay with her, and the jail rings is about off my facility. He was so proud of her, telling me recently and he was so happy when his granddaughter Charlotte was born and he went to spend Christmas with his son Sarah and his new Grace. He says something about how he stayed on the return to his exes, and I think with him. He and I often talked about book writing. He had recently discovered the National Archives in Kew and was working on a different kind of book about the French resistance hero. Apart from writing, journalism and art, we had one other important thing in common, supporting Fulham, which was his second love of the UFC. He and my son Lorenzo formed a deep bond. Paddy called him the Big Earl and was like a godfather to him, taking him for pints and to Fulham matches. We all went together in 2018 for the Championship playoffs, which saw Fulham defeat Villa to be promoted. He was mortified as after the match, trying to make a quick getaway, he inadvertently took Lorenzo into the midst of all the angry Villa supporters. Going to games always involved lunch and a pint or two at the Crabtree. When Fulham came back from 1-0 down to beat Brentford 2-1 in extra time in November, he was so happy he insisted he had never enjoyed a game so much. This from someone who, as we just heard, had covered 9 World Cups and had watched the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, Pele and George Best. Last time we all went out together, a couple of weeks before his death, was to see Fulham Ipswich. Afterwards we went to a pub in Putney to watch the late match, Liverpool against Man U. As always, somebody recognised him and came and asked his opinion. And as always, Paddy was generous with his time. Indeed, just a few days after his death, he was supposed to be taking Lorenzo to a match against Forest. Instead, they showed his photograph on the screen in Madrid at half-time. Every time Fulham win, I go to text him. I think I always will. I will miss seeing his big smile across the road on Armsbury Street and catching up. Paddy, we miss you.
Of 2019, we had a marvelous visit from dear Patrick, and there were a couple of highlights to our trip with him. The first was a little surprise that we had finally really in advance. It was a helicopter ride. They had to cancel the first one because of the cooler weather up at Meyer Canyon. But we ended up going on an equally good one down over the top of a place called Cougar Canyon, then on to Vernon, and over Sparkling Hills, and back over to another lake, and then back into Corona. Patrick got to sit in the front seat the whole way. We did make a video about it, you may have all seen. Unfortunately, we couldn't really exist. The other really interesting visit that we had was to a winery, believe it or not. So we went to this winery at the end of our cycle tour around the town of Vesuvius, and ended up at it's called Incan Winery. It's at a resort called Spirit Ridge, and we ended up in there, and I don't know if it was Patrick or whether he defended himself to a lady called Diana. She was an older, more mature woman that had great knowledge about how to sell wine. Anyway, Patrick was, as we were tasting wine, and normally it's usually 5 wine servings. But in this case, it was in excess of double that. Needless to say, we had a great time there. And as soon as Patrick got an inkling that, wine club, and a discount off wine and anything in the gift store. So Patrick said, took off and said that would include 10 or 15% off anything that I buy. And she said, of course. So anyway, he went and he bought, it was my birthday, and he bought this lovely bowl that we usually use mostly in the summertime for salads and stuff. Anyway, he bought that from the birthday. And what else was there? Oh yeah, it was a nice reminder of the good time that we had for a week with him, or over the few days. Anyway, we will miss Patrick. Great deal. In the spirit of him, I hope you're all enjoying your celebration of life in London. And yeah, we'll miss him with his great sense of humor, his wit, of course, his razor sharp, and his charming charisma. From this part of the world, that's all I have for you. Bye
Correct. Stay right there. She's here as well.
No doubt at some stage there will be a discussion about whether the Andy was my oldest friend in Johnstown. I first met him in Prescott, Anfield, in the 1970s. When I was a reporter for the Liverpool Post, he had a dream job. He couldn't advisor and was a national inaugural football correspondent. And so, with many his friends here today, he struck up an instant friendship. And he, being the consummate national hat visiting the provinces, sucked as much local information out of me as he could, which was not. 7 years later, I was lucky enough to join him as a guardian sports referee, where I sometimes had the pleasure of staying with his wife Chris and their 2 children in Surrey. I'll never forget their telephone number, because Duncan's answer, delivered in a broad language of accents. Shuttleworth 217, who's speaking, please? Duncan, I know, has lost his northern accent. His dad has not lost his accent. Paddy was good, he was very good at his job. He had no mind. He had an innate knowledge of football which grew with each year. I don't get to hold what I regard as some of the best jobs in British journalism without knowing what you're talking about. Paddy cared about his craft, about the game, and about what readers thought of him. As a sub in London, I saw firsthand how he dealt with what he regarded as the brain test. He would argue his case using the mind, and also on most occasions when he was in the wrong. Occasionally he knew when to back off and have a laugh. He hated his copying in the toast. Ian Ridley remembers subbing Paddy's Monday piece from the Man United game. United were going through a good spell then, pre-Ferguson, and had won 1-0. He wrote a brilliant intro along the lines of, Manchester United currently a bit like sex. When they're good, they're very, very good. And when they're bad, they're still very good. Ian's headline managed to live up to his headline was Sex and a Single Goal. And somehow that made it past the chief sergeant and into the paper. On Monday morning, Ian's phone rang. It was Paddy. Ian expecting an ear bashing, as Paddy didn't have something of a reputation for betraying or berating any happy circle change so much as a comment. He began preparing his defense. Ridders, said Paddy. Been told you sub my piece. Yes, he replied. Before you kick off, let me say. He got no further. Ridders, I'm ringing you to tell you that was genius. People will be phoning me. Excuse me. He fears, but he was also generous. And it was all because he cared. And he wanted to get the top job. But standing in his way was David Lacey, one of the top writers in football in Britain.
Eventually ending up in the front. Henry Ritter. I spent an enjoyable educational year as an Indian, subbing Paddy's copy, which really didn't need it. He filed exquisite copy, which he was so proud of that he credited every word. I unnecessarily took out an adjective voice and got a prompt call from Paddy early the next day, explaining why that adjective was the engine he drove. He was annoyed by my mistake, but Paddy was never annoyed for long. Too much fun, too much laughter to be done. Amy Lawrence. I loved how Paddy could be just as engaging talking to a revered manager and an ordinary family. He had this effect on people that they would naturally want to share with him their ideas and their passionate opinions. Don Johnson, I will miss his refined Scottish brogue and the twinkle in his eyes. Michael Cole. We first met in 1991 when I was a very green reporter for BBC Radio London. He was one of the big names in Fleet Street. Embarrassingly, the seat that had been booked for me in the press box at Highbury was many rows from the telephone point I was to use for my course. So I was slightly nervous as I asked if I could pass the long telephone extension. He couldn't have been more helpful to a young pup who cajoled his colleagues to help get the cable from the front of the press box to my spot in the back. I don't suppose
deserved all the effort, but he never forgot his kindness. John Ryder. He was funny, he was bright, he was intelligent, he had charm, he had deep knowledge, and a mischievous humour. A couple of people who worked with him on his books. Ian Priest. He was a great writer on football, of course, but on life too. He was very funny and had everything in good perspective. And Matt Phillips, who couldn't be here today, worked with him on his Alex Ferguson book, I had grown up reading his columns semi-religiously as a gospel on football. I recall vividly that he was relentlessly professional, a quick, dry wit, and that he spoke in complete sentences with perfectly enunciated syllables. Harry Holden said he was such a wonderful, maverick, clever, funny, irreplaceable man. And Carrie Brown. Not a match goes past without a colleague mentioning their love for Paddy and their admiration for him. Always feels like he'll just still pop up with that wonderful smile. So thank you. Should we just thank people for their patience and for listening to them? Please continue to share the story. Have fun, because we are here to celebrate.
Let me know your selection.
Did you do his name? I didn't probably do it. Are you happy about it? It's a bit short.
Amazing tribute.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, very good writer. You know, for some reason,
very thoughtful. He was very funny. He was very funny.
And he was very around the sport. I mean, there are not many people like that.
And very kind as well, because it really was in the she's not there quite a long time. Not that long ago, he was working for Talksport. And there's 100% change.
It's such a fucking sound. I'll see you later, guys.
You're not saying for one more?
No, I'm gonna I've got a bit,
Okay, sure. If you fancy lunch sometime,
I'm always free.
Well, why don't we have lunch?
Okay.
Alright, well, I've got your number. Instead of giving you crappy tips, why don't I take you to lunch instead?
We'll do that. I'd love that. I'd love that.
That would probably be a lot safer and a lot better. A lot better for both of us. Take care. How are you getting out of here? You got a car? I've got a car. Take care, Roger. Take care. Fantastic skier yeah, but talk to me. What else are you doing apart from racing? You went to Cheltenham as well. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? That I think, obviously, you've been covering sport for four decades, and you're seeing the kind of changes. I think, I only know racing wise, and most people know football and the other sports.
Yeah, it's general with everything.
Yeah, everything's way more regimented. I mean, you just got to jump through it. And I think as well from a spectator's point of view, what was a lot more easygoing fun, particularly racing, was turned out. You could go anywhere, you could even go to shoot yourself in the foot because good quality, something that shows the drama and the excitement and the colour of it, which is obviously fantastic at doing. We had an association Go North Festival in Kelso, Carlisle, and Muscle a couple of weekends ago. You know John Grosnick, well, he's got your agency up north. He takes some pictures of celebrations, the crowd, the atmosphere, all incredibly flat. Just I've got some photos that you took just off maybe my camera or maybe your own camera from Aintree when we were in the crowd. You and former wife Kirsty, just to remind you. And me and former wife too, and Matt H and former girlfriend Helen, and Richard Edmondson, who is here. So there he is, he's over there. And it's a picture of him jumping into my arms. We're back to at the end of the day, you're taking all your Grand National clips, you got them all back. And then it's a picture, him and I managed to back the last one of the day. And you just took some great photos of us in the crowd. And I just showed, it's just, it is fantastic elation.
Yeah, I do remember. That's where we used to send. They used to be. Service stations.
Young people in the how pictures used to come back from Aintree, York, Doncaster, wherever, having a courier to get it to the station, to Red Star at King's Cross, and then somebody else, another courier to pick it up, get the film back, develop it, get the contacts.
You're gonna get that.
no industry, I mean, a lot of industries have changed, but I don't think any industry has changed quite as rapidly.
No, well, when I moved
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you live. So now you're down on the edge of Extreme, or?
No, just actually it's about 20 minutes.
I know where Wells is. Wells is far, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've been down there a couple of times. It's a great one. So are you south of it or north of it? Oh yeah, what's the Road? Yeah, so yeah. Northwest, yeah. Kirsty, you live 2 villages apart. Are you back together again? That's very complicated. Freya is now 13. You've got 19-year-old in France, and Kirsty's got other kids. Sorry, you had 2 kids. Johnny, come. I know Steve. Like I said. Somerset levels right in front of me. I love the Somerset levels. I go away with my mates once a year. A couple of times we stayed around as well.
It's disgusting.
Calling it Forest White. Good morning.
This should be
We're
started hitting each
That's all you did.